Please let me know when I'm live.
Okay, you can start now.
All right, great. Hello, everyone. My name is Eniola Sabia, and I'll be taking the PHP Introduction to MySQL course for the backend track. Okay, so yes, let's get started. So first will be, of course, an introduction to MySQL. What is MySQL? And yes, so we go, and it is of course the most popular open source SQL database management system, and it's also it's a relational database management system, or yes, it's a MySQL is a relational database management system. And what is an RDBMS? It is a software which enables one to, of course, implement a database with tables, columns, and indexes. It interprets an SQL query and combines its information from different tables, and then it's just like guarantees the referential integrity between the rows of various and tables. Okay, so this may seem like big words, but as we get into this course, we're going to actually break everything down, and then we're going to understand more of this concept. And then MySQL is a fast and easy to use RDBMS, which is being used by for many small and big businesses. According to the bit of research I did and then sourced from stackshare.io/MySQL, companies like Uber, Netflix, Slack, Udemy, and so many more, they all use MySQL as one of their RDBMS systems. And yes, of course, who developed MySQL? It was developed and is being distributed and supported by Oracle corporations. And also, lastly, MySQL provides the best open source RDBMS and is being is used for developing web-based, software applications. So moving on to how to install MySQL. So I'll be showing you how to install MySQL right now on your system, and there are actually things two how will I put it? There are two ways of doing this. Of course, you can either have XAMPP installed on your system, and of course, there's going to be an after installation. So I will start by actually, if you don't have XAMPP installed on your system. So first off, you go to Apache Friends. Yes. So you go to this link here. Okay, let me reshare my screen so you can see my host. All right. Okay. So yes, how to install XAMPP on your system if you don't have XAMPP installed. And the reason why I'm taking this approach is to make everyone be on the same path. There are different ways you can actually install MySQL on your system. You can either use by installing it through this approach by having XAMPP, or you can actually install it independently by downloading the community server and then actually installing it on your system, and then using other applications to read databases in your system like MySQL Workbench and all. But for the sake of convenience and to make everyone be on the same path and to make things very easy for you, we're going to be using XAMPP. And XAMPP comes packaged with all these components such as Apache, MySQL, FileZilla, and so many other things just to make your life easier. So to get XAMPP, you go to this link, apachefriends.org/download. And yes, so you can download for Windows, you can download for Linux, you can download for Mac OS X, and yes, you can all do all that. So for this course, we're going to be using PHP 8 because that is the latest PHP that has been created. And of course, you can always download for older versions of PHP. You can download for PHP 7, you can download for PHP 7.4. You can also, of course, do for 8, which is what we're going to be using. So if you're using a Windows, you click this download 64-bit, And then if you're using a Linux, you can actually download this one too. And of course, if you're using a Mac OS, so for Mac OS users, there are actually two ways you can actually do this. You can either download the native installer, which is this one, these first three are native installers, or you can download a VMware, which is more or less like a virtual machine. And I'm going to explain this in a bit. For me, I'm going to be using this VMware, but the installation process is still the same, like you doing every other thing. The only thing the VMware does is that it creates like a virtual machine which is like added to your system, so you don't like have the 80 docs and then every other file for actually running the server on your system. So it mounts it more or less like an hard drive or an external hard disk or something. So I'm going to download this, and then of course the download is going to start. So I won't download this anymore because I have already downloaded it, and then I'll be showing you how it works. So I'll go to this place, yes, and then yes, when you download it, you get a file like this, which is this XAMPP ox blah 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 dot pz2. So of course, for macOS users, you can't actually, of course, run this. And then if you try to open this, it is going to compress it again. And then if you try to open what was compressed, it's going to like um unarchive it again. So it's going to be a repeated process, and then you won't actually end up installing it. So I went online, and then I found out that there was a solution to this. So I got some common problems you may have when installing XAMPP on your system, which of course the solution is attached there too. I think after this class, I'll try to share this slide so you can also have this as a resource. Okay, so to solve this issue, what you do is that you rename this extension to .dmg. So when you do this, then you can now you can now open the application to actually run the installer, and then every other thing is straightforward. And then also, we're going to just be doing this and then moving it to the application folder. So I won't want to do this again because I've already done that. And then for, of course, Windows users, it's easy as that. To just download the installer, then follow the process. You won't be required to do anything special. You're just going to follow the normal installation process, and then you'll be fine. So when you've installed XAMPP, then you run it, okay, and then the interface is as easy as this. Okay, so first off, what you do is you would like to start the server itself, and then this should take a bit. Yes, so this is going to start these services for you. After you started the services, then yes, let me just start all of this. So you need Apache, majorly you need Apache and then MySQL to get started. Okay, then of course, also if you're using a Windows, it's so easy. It's also so easy. All you have to do is just when you open the XAMPP application, you just see a what they call it like this: MySQL, Apache, FileZilla, Mercury, Tomcat, and some other things. All you have to do is you only need two. You need Apache and you need MySQL, and then you just start them. So when you have done this, then this all you need to do is you open your browser and then you type in localhost, and then it should work. But now it's not going to work here because as I said, for Mac OS users, there are two ways you can actually install XAMPP. You can either do this by installing the default native installer, or installing it as a VM. So I installed it as a VM, as a virtual machine. So I'm going to have to do something like this. First, I'm going to have to forward this port because, as I said, I'm installing XAMPP in an hard drive, and then I'm going to have to like mount it on my system before I can access to the hard drive, just like the way you need to connect your system before you can access the files in an hard drive or something. So I'll have to do this first. Enable. And then, of course, I'm going to also have to mount this because I won't be able to see the configuration files for XAMPP. And then you notice something new is going to come up here. Not this. So when I click mount, yes, you can see a bit of like a system is connected here on my system. So this is where I'm going to have all my XAMPP files and all, and then the htdocs folder and then the other configurations. So now when I go back to my browser and I refresh this link, it is going to work. And yes, you've successfully installed XAMPP on your system. Also, a bit of issue I notice people face when actually installing XAMPP is when you install the software and then you have a problem running Apache or MySQL on port 80. So they actually fixes for that. You can just Google is your best friend, of course. So just go on Stack Overflow and then you find a solution to that on how to change the port if your laptop is currently using port 80, because that's the default one. It's actually port 80, but I've changed mine to port 880. So for example, my system is actually already using this for something. So that's why I'm running it on port 80. Okay, so now that you have done that, now after the installation, so we've gone through this, you start Apache and MySQL services, then open your browser. So yes, you can either use localhost, and if localhost doesn't work, you can try localhost 880. And then once you've done that, you should have this page here telling you that welcome to XAMPP, blah blah blah, and then the version of PHP you're using and all. So now to actually access MySQL here, or to access the MySQL that XAMPP comes with, you click this PHP my admin on this nav there, and then yes, this is a simple MySQL database for us to use. Now moving on to the next thing. Yes, so these are some common problems you may actually face. You may also face an issue like this: error starting XAMPP stack and could not calculate MAC address, blah blah blah. You can get the solution from this. I found my solution on this Stack Overflow link, which is here. And now we're going to get into the main aspect of the day. So now we're going to be learning how to do some bit of things in MySQL, or just some simple SQL commands, and then also how the MySQL database interface works. So this is how simple the my PHP admin interface works. And of course, you can view your database. You can decide to write an SQL. You can check status of your database. You can also have user accounts to check the user accounts in your system. We're going to touch most of these things. So to start with, if you want to create a database using the normal SQL command, it's as easy as just writing create database and then the database name, and then you're going to have a database. So this is an example here, and then I'm just going to write this and then yes, and then go. So voila, you already have a new database here, Zuri app. Okay, and then you may want to, of course, display the databases you have on your in your PHP admin server. And to do that, of course, just go to SQL. Let me leave this and then okay, yes. Let me refresh this. Okay, so then you click, you type in show databases, and then this SQL command is just going to show you all the databases you have in your server. And then yes, so this is going to be the command, and then you type go here, and then yes, there you have it. You have a list of all the databases you have on the system. So when you install XAMPP with PHP admin, it actually comes back, with this default data that the whole system uses to actually power itself. It comes with this information schema, MySQL, performance schema, PHP admin, and test. So this 1, 2, 3, 4 are not meant to be deleted. the information schema, MySQL and performance schema and PHP admin, you do not delete them. If you delete them, you probably crash the whole server and then you have to restore install everything again. So of course, it's only the databases you create that you are allowed to remove, and then of course you can also remove tests. Okay, so now let's click back the Zuri app we have. And then we've checked out how to create a database using basic SQL command. We've also checked out to display databases, and then now we'll move on to selecting a database using SQL command. So using the using MySQL, which is this, everything is a bit simpler here because we have like a graphical user interface to actually help us to do all the functions of like probably viewing the databases we have, maybe even making a search or putting a query or doing a lot of things, or even creating a table. So there's a lot of GUI here, but before then, you people actually operate like they use SQL using the command line interface. So that is why these commands are usually very, very necessary to and for you to at least understand what they do. So if you wanted to select the database, now you can just come here to click any database you want to use, and then you can proceed to doing whatever you want to do. But before, because you were just going to be on the command line and then the home, so you have to do something like use Zuri app, and then this is now meant to actually select the database you want to use. So if you were to do that, this is what it is going to look like. Yes, so you do use Zuri app, go. Okay, so sorry, coming, turn the empty result. Did I get that name right? Okay, so yes, I'm actually meant to write some list of other commands here because, as I said, using PHP admin or the making the interface like this has made a lot of things very easy for us to do. So we may not actually really need this command, but if you were in like a blank command line interface whereby you've not selected any database, you can't perform any operation or anything. So you would need to first select the database you want to use by you need to first select the database you want to use by using the use Zuri or the database name you want to use, and then you can go on to type any other command you may want to do or any operation you may want to do. Okay, and then for deleting a database, it's as easy as just writing drop database and then the database name. So you can actually try doing this, but I don't think you want to be using drop a lot in anything that has to do with database. So you don't make a mistake of dropping production database. That can happen. Okay, so that is just for deleting a database, drop database and then the database name. Now we're going to move on to creating a table because these are like the most important components in the whole of database and all. You need tables to actually store this data because after you create the database, you actually have tables inside this database, and then these tables hold on to different information. So you can have a table to take users. You can have, let's say we're building an e-commerce application now. You can have a table to at least have the information of the users. You can have another table to have the information of like the shopping details or the shopping. Okay, sorry. You can have another table to have like carts of the users. So every cart item that someone shops or buys or places in cart, you can have a table to store that information. You can also have another table to store orders. You can have another table to store shipping addresses, and you get the point. So you have tables to hold like similar data together. So something whereby you can like group everything into one and then just store it in there. And then for creating this table, it's as easy as writing create table, and then of course the table name, and then the column, and then the data type. So we're going to actually see some data types we have now, and then you can just this is an example command if you're going to create a table. So let me just create a table for this for this database we created in Zoom appear. So I'm going to go to SQL and then I'm going to write this and go. And yes, you have a table under this database already. So now this is like when you basically want to use more of that, writing that hard code command or writing that SQL query to create a table if you are using like the terminal approach of manipulating this data of the database. But if you are using, of course, PHP admin, you can also make your life easier by doing something like this new, and then you can just type in the table name. So you can, let me just write this as table users. I'm going to try to maximize my screen so you guys can see. Okay, so you can also try, you can just do this table users, and then you can have like, this will be the columns or the attributes of your, what they call it, of your table. So let's say I want something to hold the ID of everyone, then this could be int 255. This is just like the standard you put. Then you can also have something called auto increment, or let me just touch this one by one. So collation type is like how, like the type of, or the way, there are different types of collation, like how you're actually collecting this data. You have, it's more or less like the text formats that you are using to collect this data, or the amount of characters or something that is it to actually hold the values, or the yes, the values that will be entering into this attribute or this column. That is what this collation is for. Then you also have attributes, whether they are binary or this, it has an attribute on updates current stamp, it does something or no. And then of course you can actually put null here. So this can be determined whether this column is null at default, or this column is null at default or is nullable. And then for the index, so yes, for the index, most time, even though it's not required, but for having a table like table users, you always want to have a primary key. So we can also have called this index like, oh, did I create that table already? Sorry, let me just try to get that back real quick. Okay, so 255. Yeah, so I was explaining this. So you can have different types of index. It may want to be a primary key index, which of course are the ones you see that do not repeat, and then they are unique for everyone. And then they are usually most times in an auto increments order. So now you can have a primary key, which means it is unique for everyone, or it is like the main identifier for for a particular row, or for a particular, yeah, for a particular row or of data. So this primary key is going to be a foreign key in another table if you're going to start doing a lot of joining, and then um doing a lot of relationship between databases and all. And then of course you have unique. Unique is just necessarily saying that you may want to do apply this index on like an attribute for email. So if I was going to have, of course, let's say name, and then I want to have email here, I want to do something like unique here. So that means, of course, I don't want 2 users or 4 users having the same email in my system. That would bring a lot of problem or something. So I can just put it to be this, having an index of unique, which means, of course, no other user or no other data or row in this this table should have the same email. And then you may not really need these other ones, but as you grow in MySQL, you can actually use them. So for primary key, this is just going to what I'll use. Then you can decide to have comments, and then this AI. What this AI means is you want to have an auto increment value. So of course, primary key is a key that is used to identify everyone in like a database, or it's like the unique identifier of like a row, or of a row of data in a database. So you want to always check this auto increment key there, so that the database can automatically handle this for you. So if I have a user, because of course this primary key must not be repeated for 2 people. It must not be repeated for 2 people. So if I have a user one, I won't want to have another user having the ID of one. So you can just as well tick this auto increments key. So the database can actually help you handling in the 1, 2, 3 and the numbering process. So those are majorly the things you need. These other things are not always too needed except you're doing a bit of advanced stuffs, or as you grow in SQL, you may use them. So I'm just going to create some other stuffs. And then, yes, now data types. These are like, sorry. Yes, so these are like the types of data that can actually be, that can be taken in by a particular column. Okay, so what do I mean by this? For example, name. You won't have someone's name having things like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's all. Of course, there'll be letters in there, and then there'll be some other things. Maybe there's an hyphen, if it's a compound name, and some other things like that. Okay, so now what you can do is there are majorly like these four types of data types. You have variable character, you have text, and then you have date. So yes, you have string, you have date and time, and then you have numeric value. So for variable character, this is like having it's just good for using, use this for when you're having like columns with name and things that are like limited but they're not too large, like, and then they can also have a bit of like symbols and some maybe other things in it. So that's when you use this variable character. And then of course the length is 255. And then now this length, I don't think I really explained this. So what this length is saying is that if I put 5 now, if I put 4 as this length, that means that the maximum number of ID I can have is 9999 in this what they call it, in this row. So I can have 1, 2, 3 to 100. I can have from that 100 to 999 or to 1000. Though I can't have, yes, that's the max, 1000. Yes, that's the max. So what it's saying is that you do not, how am I going to explain this? So what this length is telling you is that you cannot like have more than, if you have, let me just do another practical example. So let's say I put 2 in this length value now. That means the maximum number of IDs I can have is 99. Okay, so if I increase this to 3, that means the maximum number of IDs I can have here. So I can have 1 to 999, because if I go to 1000, this will be 4 values. So this is like the length of the value. So now I can't have, of course, I can't just leave this as 3, because I won't want to be looking at my app, I'm not having up to 1000 users. So the major standard people use is 255, and then of course you can see that's like a whole lot, and then you may not even finish that or reach that max length. So that is usually the standard for that. And then for name, some people actually reduce this at times, but you can also be, just leave it as 255, because it's just saying that if I change this to like 5, that means my name cannot be longer than ENIO. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my name cannot be longer than this. If I try to enter this in this for my name for any data at all or for any row, it's going to throw an error because it's more than 5. So that is why you're advised to just leave this as 255, or some people also use 50. But now they use 50 whereby you're breaking this down to something like first name and another one is last name. So I'm just going to leave this as 255. And then for email too, email is also variable character. And then I'm just going to leave this as 255. So I think let me just create a new for password. And then you majorly want to leave this in variable character also, because you can have some bit of strings, some dollar from symbols in it, and then others. So you may want to leave this as 255 also. So once you're done with this, you can also decide to add more colons, do some other things here, and then you can also decide to preview the SQL. So yes, remember the SQL we wrote from here was create table users, blah, 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 blah. So if you're using MySQL here, which is an RDBMS, it can actually save you the stress of writing this actual SQL from your head or offhand, and then just give you a graphical user interface. You put in your values and everything you want, and then you just click OK to run the SQL statement. So you can actually also get this SQL code, which is this create table, the name of the database, and then the table. So you can actually remove this and then just put create table users. But to be more specific, because as data, I mean, as the application grows, you may be working with multiple, what they call it, you're working with multiple databases in one RDBMS system. For example, yeah, I can also create another database and be using it. So that's why the system is going to want to first specify this, and then it's also want to specify the table under it. Then of course you have the column, the data type, and then other attributes that may want to follow, and then next one, and all. So let's just close this and run this. Okay. So yes, save. So once I save that, yes, I already have a new table here. So we have ID, we have name, we have email, and then we have password. So we can work with this. Then, of course, you can also delete a table. So if I don't need, for example, I may not want to use this table users, or I may not want to use this users table. So to do that, you can, of course, MySQL makes everything easier for you. You can just come here to click the drop, and then this is going to delete everything and remove the table from your database. As well, you can also write the raw SQL command of drop table users, and then you put it in here, and then you type in go, and then that's going to also do the same action as clicking the drop here. Okay, so we can also insert data into the table by writing this SQL command. So now these are where, I mean, this is where SQL commands are going to actually really come in useful when you're writing the the pure or vanilla PHP code, because you need to have this or be familiar with this SQL commands to actually run things, and then you won't be having this graphical user interface like your users, for example, in Facebook or any of these big companies that use this might use MySQL like Uber. They don't give you this database your user interface to you entering your, let's say I'm a user now, and then I want to insert my data. They don't give you this view to put in your data and then click all of that. So what they do is that they get your data from using forms, and then they manipulate them and fix them into an SQL statement like this and put in your values here. So let me just write this is SQL statement to put in users into this table. Yes. So I'm just going to clear that first thing, and then I have first name, last name, email, and password. So then I'm also going to specify value. So the structure of the insert statement is easy. You first write insert to, then you specify the table name in which you want to insert the data to. Then you specify the columns which you're actually inserting the data to. So column 1, 2, 3, and then the values, and then you separate this by comma. So for an example, we have insert into users, and then first name, last name, email, and password, then value. So now these values have to correspond to the order you actually put in the columns. So if I put in Eniola here, and then if I put in Osabia here and I put in Eniola here, then Osabia will be taken as my first name and Eniola will be taken as my last name. And of course, you may not want that. So the order of columns you write here must be the same order you are inserting your tables or your values here. So that's one thing to take note of. So yes, so this is going to insert Eniola as my first name, Osabia as my last name, Osabia as my email, and then pass12 as my password. So this is just a simple statement, and then let's also run this. And yes, you get this one row inserted, and then the time it took to run this, which is 0.0041 seconds, which is like so negligible. So yes, that's the SQL command way of actually inserting a new user to database. So of course, using MySQL or this RDBMS we've been provided with, you can also click this insert and then just enter your values here. For example, I can also just do this and say Eniola, and then say Osabia. I can also decide to pick email as just anything.com, and then my password could just be also anything. Okay, and once I'm done with this, so of course you're also given the opportunity to enter as many um tables or rows you want as at a time. So I can also decide to have another one here and do that. So I'm just going to click go. So it is going to want me to, I mean, it has already been inserted. So if I go back here, of course, you can see the new entry I just made, Eniola Osabia, with this fake email and then this gibberish password. So that's another way of also inserting data into a table for using the RDBMS. So now for viewing data, and now these things can be a bit complex here, but for starting, it's as easy as just writing this select statement, and then this star means select all. So which means I just want to select everything that's inside this database. You can actually specify what data you want here. So let me write this here. So for example, this is the default. So you can have select all from table users, and then this is just going to give you everything here. So let me run this go. Yes, and you see it gives me everything back, my first name, last name, email, password. So you can also decide to specify what value or entry you want by, instead of using the all, you're just going to specify them one by one. So let's say I want all the first name in my data on in my table. Then I also want the last names in my table. Then all I have to do is click go, and then now instead of using getting everything, I'm just going to get first name and last name from table users, and then go. And of course you can see I have this only. So this, you make use of this a whole lot as you grow in using MySQL or SQL. Okay, so now we're going to go to the code. That's just a brief walk through the RDBMS, and then using the SQL commands, and then using the graphical user interface provided to you by MySQL or PHP at my admin. So now we're going to be connecting database with PHP. So we're going to be doing this raw, and what I would like to do is I actually have this, what they call it, this link from W3 Schools, and it's very helpful. So if you don't know W3 Schools, it's a very good online learning. I mean, it's a very good learning platform for you to like just probably get or refresh yourself about a particular code or something, and then this is like the best connection to MySQL you can have, like the best tutorial or anything you may call it, you can have anywhere, because it shows you the different ways you can actually connect to your database using PHP. And of course, first one is we have the this MySQL object oriented example. You also have a procedural example, and then you have a PDO. So now you may be thinking that what's the difference between me connecting my database using this command, me connecting using this, and then also what's the difference between me using this? So first off, the difference between you using the object oriented and then the procedural is just, I'll say, preference, because some people like to code in object oriented, which is very much advisable, and then some people may just want to code procedurally and then just do everything in procedures like step by step. So that's just for this one. So it's preference. So now the main difference is between you using these two MySQL, whether object oriented or procedural, and using PDO. So PDO is better because if you're connected to a database using PDO, you have the opportunity to use more database type. Like you can use other database except for just using MySQL. And then I think they also have the reason of why you can use that here. All right, so yes, so both MySQL and PDO have their advantages. PDO will work on 12 different database systems, whereas MySQL I will only work for MySQL databases. So if you're, of course, looking at a bigger picture, and then you're thinking, okay, maybe as we grow or expand, we may actually want to change our database to something maybe more light or more efficient or something, then it's advisable you start using PDO from scratch so that you won't have to rewrite everything. Because if you want to switch to your project to use another database, PDO makes the process very easy, and then all you have to do is you have to change the connection string and then a few queries. But when you're using MySQL, you have to change everything to literally PDO, or you do everything custom to the database you want to use. And then, of course, this also include the queries. So this is why it's advisable for you to use PDO. And then both are object oriented, but MySQLi also offers a procedural API. And then they also both support prepared statement. And prepared statements are a way to protect your system from SQL injection. And as you grow, you will know the importance of, the effects of SQL injection. And what SQL injection is talking about is that this is like the way hackers used to like break into your system by just probably putting a string or something like a comma, an apostrophe or anything, just to like break your system or see how your system will react to something like that. So if you do not really work on the back end of your code and then probably just do it shabbily, they will be able to break access into your system. So they both offer prepared statement, and prepared statement is a way for you to actually guide against people or hackers doing this. So for the sake of we begin as beginners, we're going to just use this line of connecting to our database. And then of course you don't need to cram this, but as you grow with doing this or connecting to multiple database or working with projects, you get to know this syntax often. But again, you don't need to cram it. W3 schools is here, you can always access it, and then you're good to go whenever you have it. So yes, I'm going to be connecting to this database we have created here, to this PHP admin, and then we're going to be working with our code, and then let's just get started. So I'm going to open my Visual Code, okay, and I would like to first open a folder. So now you have to locate to your htdocs folder. So you can also just search for this. If you're using a Windows, you can just use the Windows search to check for where the htdocs folder is, and then you can probably just pin it or copy the path or know how to get there. But this is where XAMPP literally runs like its PHP files from. So yes, I'm just going to start and create a folder and call it MySQL. Or let me just say connect me. All right, so I'm just going to create this folder, and then I want to open this folder. All right, great. So yes, I've increased the size of my text editor so it can be as bold or as legible as possible for everyone. So I'm going to first create a new file here called and name it index.php. It's always advisable to make your first file index.php, as of course this is the first file that your server is going to look for whenever it wants to open a folder in PHP. And literally almost every standard server, except you customize it to look for another file first, it's either index.php or index.html. So let me create this, and then to also view this project which I've just created, I'm just going to go open a new tab, and then I'm going to type in localhost, then your port, and then just type that folder which I just created now, connect_me. All right, great. So let me echo something here to know that this is working perfectly. And then just say, hey. All right. Yes. All right, so let me refresh this, and yes, I can see hey here. So that means this is being picked up. So now I will copy this code for connecting my database or my PHP code to the database, and then yes, I'm going to explain what the variables here mean and what everyone here is doing. Okay, so first off, we start off by declaring this variable server name, which here is localhost. Then we also have the username, and then we have password. So because of we are using XAMPP helps us to do something, which is it gives us a default username, and then the password is usually empty. But in when you're making production apps, of course, the password here is not going to be empty because you always want to put a very, very, very strong password that people can't break into. Because if they break into your database, they have access to your system because that's where you keep your data. So, but for XAMPP, because and it's of course local host, it's just going to be, since it's just for testing or development, the password is usually empty and the username is root. So this is a default. You don't have to check off these things. It's majorly the same setting for everyone, except you are using another file or processing server like WAMP or AMP or other things like that. But for XAMPP, it is usually the server name is localhost and then the username is root. If you are using WAMP makes you choose what you want on the first launch, and then you can actually change that. But for XAMPP, you can't really change that. So yes, I would also want to specify this, and then let's see and run this to see if it's connected successfully. So yes, I've been able to connect to the database successfully. And then to show that this was successful, let me just put a password here and then you see this is going to come up with an error. And you can see connection failed, access denied for user at root using password. Yes, which means the password is incorrect. So I'm going to also change this. And then if I try to change something here, let's say I just put this or something, it's going to show me an error. So for this whole process to work and then for this to echo successfully, because of course PHP works line by line, so it reads this line and processes it, next line and processes it. So for it to get here, that means these guys have been passed, I've passed the test and then they are working. So yes, connected successfully. So with this, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, with 9 lines of code, you've connected your PHP application to your database. Congrats. So now moving on to performing more things, you can also, as you go, you may want to try out using procedural. Procedural is not always so advisable, but you want to use more of object oriented, or you may want to also try out PDO. PDO is also easy, it's not something difficult. They only try to use a try and catch statement here, and then they also do some other using the PDO class, and then setting some other attribute and error mode and all. So you can also try using connecting your database to PDO. It's going to be the same setting here. Just change your values here, change roots, and then make this empty. And then you can also connect with PDO. So that is for connecting our database, our PHP code um to a database. So now we're going to be working with these different working these commands or this statement in our PHP code. So we're going to be trying out the insert statement, we're going to be trying out the select statement, we're going to be trying out the where clause, order by clause. We're also going to try out the update statement, and we're going to try out the delete statement. So also, again, W3 Schools is your best friend to get the best way or the most direct approach or method to actually do these commands. So for the first one, I've also attached links to also for you to easily access these guys at anytime you need. So for the first one is which is the insert statement. So for the insert statement is as easy as just this. So they also give you the process, the different ways you can also do it. That's why I said W3 Schools is your best friend when trying to master this concept of database with PHP and all. So if you want to code, if you're started with the procedural, the object-oriented approach of connecting your database, then you can just move on to working with this and then running the start statement. Or if you're started with the procedural approach, they also give you the way to continue. And then if you started with the PDO approach, then also you're going to be using this. So yes, we started with the object-oriented approach. I keep forgetting to increase my screen size so you people can see it. Okay, so we've been given this, we started with this approach and then we're going to continue with it. Also, one thing I did not do here was specify the database I want to connect this, I want to actually connect to. So right now, I am connected to the server, but I am not connected to the database I made, which was Zuri app. So to do this, you're going to add new details, which first here is this database name. And then, of course, the database name we created was Zuri app. Then you are going to add that entry to this place here. And then of course, if you have gotten some good extensions for or the IntelliSense for PHP in Visual Studio Code, you can also see what everyone here is doing, or the each um of these functions are doing, or these variables here are doing. So this host for this MySQL class. So the first is this host, which is the host you want to connect this thing to, then the username of the database you are connecting, then the password, and then the database name. So you can also go ahead and do things like port. So this is when you are doing a bit of more complex thing, and then you're having maybe your database running on a specific port, and then sockets and some things like that. So we're just going to do what we need here, and which is adding this database name. Yeah. So let's quickly check this if this connected successfully, and yes, it's connected successfully. So now what I would like to proceed to do is to do this. So copy this insert statement, and then I'm going to explain what they do now. So of course, for you to do anything in working with your database and then with PHP, you first have to have made your connection to the database, which is usually advisable to do at the start of the code or at the top of the code. So you first make sure your connection is successful. Then when you do your connection, you can as well now use these other things and then run your commands and all. Okay, so sorry. So now, how does this work here? So I've connected my database here, and then I've saved this variable for this connection. So this variable con has this connection to the database, and then I can use it to run SQL command. So first, what to do is, again, this way, as I was saying, this is where your SQL commands will be very useful, because you don't have the database GUI, or you don't provide this to your users to actually enter their details, and then you are the one who is going to have to manipulate it and then fill it into the spots to process. So now, what I'll do here is I'm going to first specify the table name. So going back to this insert statement here, we have, so this insert statement, or this insert data into a table we have here, it says insert into the table name, the column, and then the values. And remember, these values have to match with the order of column you put up here. So going back here, the name of the table we have here is users. Then we have first name. Yes, so we have, all right. So we have first name, we have last name, we have email, and we have password. So what I can do is I can just enter this here, and then says first name. We also have last name, we have email, and we have password. Okay. So now I would want to enter the values for each of these. So let's say I want to leave this as John. The first name of this user is John Doe, and the email or his or her email is john@example.com. And then the password for this person is password. Yes. So yes, you can actually run this. So if I should run this or refresh this page now, I should see a successfully, sorry. Okay, so if I should run this and refresh this page now, I should see a new record successfully created message here. And if I should check the database, I will see a new entry here, which is john@example.com, and password. So which means that, yes, this is working perfectly fine. Like, this command has been run successfully. And yes, so also just a quick advice, you won't also always want to put the raw password of any user in your database, in case for any reason, for safety or for any reason, you want to store the the raw text of any user's password in your database. So you usually want to hash it using some common hash method, whether by MD5, by salt, or by any process you may want to do, or by encrypting it and things like that. So now I'm going to do this. And what this is going to do is that it's going to put in this, it's going to hash this text here, which is password, and then it's going to store that in the database. So let me just refresh this to run this command. Perfect. All right, so if I should see my database here now, I can see John, I can see Doe, I can see John at John at example.com, and I can see this hash here. So this hash here is the hash of password in MD5. So this is the way you want to store your user's password in your database for good security reasons and for good practices. Okay, so this is for inserting a data into, this is to insert data into our table, insert statement. Okay, so now we'll be moving on to working with the other ones we have, which is, we also have the select statement. So basically what I'm also trying to cover is the basic aspect of CRUD. So we have something called CRUD. CRUD means create, read, update, and delete. So insert for create, that is for entering a new entry. To put in a new entry, select is for viewing, update is update is to update an existing entry, and then delete is to maybe delete something from the data. Okay. All right. So I will quickly like to touch the select statement because time has been fast spent, and then I'll share these slides with everyone so you can also go through this and practice the other statements here, or the clauses, the select statement, the update statement, and the delete statement. So for the select statement, let's quickly do this. Okay, so for the select statement, we have something as simple as this. Of course, as we experimented it the first time, it's as easy as, when it's basic, it's just writing select all from table name, and then yes, that's to get everything. And then if you want to specify what you're bringing out from a column, you can also specify the column or the number of columns you have. The columns you have, and then from the table, and then you get that data out. So for doing this, it's as easy as writing this command. So you may also want to keep writing all this, because you only need to make your connection once. After that, you don't need to do that again. Every other thing is just writing your code or your query. All right, so let me just comment this for a while and then write this. All right, so now I'm going to be selecting first name, or yes, first name and last name from table users. Okay, and then now results here means is that we want to take this connection we have here to this database con, we want to pass it through this query. This query is like a function under the MySQL class to actually perform a query on a database, and then the query we want to perform here is going to be this SQL command. So you can also decide to just write this command here if you don't want to write it here. But for good programming, you always want to like put this here and then just fixing that variable here, because of if you want to do some other things or add some other what do you call it, some other options to this function. All right, so to view the output of this, I don't have ID here, so this is going to return an error if it's trying to call out something I don't have. And then I have the name, first name, and then the last name. Okay, so I'm going to do this, and then if I should refresh, okay, I don't have 0 records. Where is this coming from? Okay, yes. So I don't have anything like first name and last name. I have an underscore for this one. So I have to specify that here. Okay. And then also from table users, not from table users. Okay, so if I should refresh this, I have name. Sorry. Yes, I also have to fix that up here. And then I have to fix that up here. Okay, so if I should run this, I have the users are in the database. So we have Eniola Osabia, we have Eniola with this capital letter Osabia, we have John Doe, we have John Doe. So you can use this to probably manipulate. You can manipulate this to do this to do a lot of useful stuffs, whether you want to output a series of data or something. So because of time, I won't be able to cover everything here. But I'm going to share this link so you can also, I mean, this slide on the PHP channel, so you can check out you can practice or use the where clause with the select statement, and you can use the order by with the select statement. So these two guys can be used with this select statement. And then of course you can also use the update statement with where, and then you can practice that when you have an entry in your data in your table and then you want to update that. And of course delete, if you want to delete a particular entry. So it's just as simple as delete from table format. For us, it is going to be users where the ID or where something is equals to this, and then it's going to be deleted. So yes, that is the end of this introduction to MySQL, and I hope you learned something new. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.